Hi guys, welcome to Brew York YouTube Live, on also Facebook and Twitter Live apparently tonight. So, welcome to our 3rd year anniversary special. So, woo! 36 months of doing live tastings.
So we didn't manage to get the Insta stream into work then.
No, the portrait filming and all the rest of it didn't quite work. So hopefully most people will be joining from YouTube where the screen will look sensible. Anyone joining us from any of the platforms, please let us know how it looks and if it all works okay. Yeah, I mentioned, like I just said, 3 years of doing live streams. Well, I suppose it's only your 34th go, isn't it?
Well, yeah, technically. Yeah, so my anniversary will be in a couple of months' time.
But it's Wednesday night. It means it's time for drinking, midweek drinking. So welcome to the stream if you can join us on a Wednesday. If not, apologies. You can watch back on Friday. Put your questions through. Pete will go through them all meticulously and feed them back, and we'll try and answer them afterwards. He didn't realise I was volunteering to do that, but he's making notes now. We're going to be joined by a couple of guests tonight. So we've done some pretty cool collaborations this month already. We've got Dan joining us from Adnams a bit, I think, first up. And then we've also got James joining us from Brew. So be sure to get your questions together for those guys when they join us on the stream later on.
And there was a third guest, actually.
Oh, sorry.
Head brewer Tom is going to be joining us for a couple of the beers because he's been heavily involved with both those collabs as well.
A rose between two thorns.
Indeed.
By the way, you're sitting in between us. We have to balance it out. It'd be a bit too, look a bit too funny otherwise. So we're back in the tasting room in Warmgate. You probably noticed by the red all over the background. It's a pretty warm room today. We haven't got aircon in this space, so if we start sweating throughout the stream, it's not the beer, honestly. But hopefully, it's going to be a good session. Get all your questions in, and for once, which is an absolute rarity for us, there's not a beer to get out of the fridge. We've gone for a very pale tasting session for probably the first time ever in our 3 year.
It is absolutely first time in 3 years we've not featured a dark beer during the tasting. With the weather being the way it is, we kind of feel that's appropriate.
And as always, if you enjoy the content, be sure to like the video and subscribe and follow us. How many extra subscribers did we get last month, Pete? A couple. So yeah, we're going to get a couple more this month even. So what's the running order today?
Right, before we get to that, I just want to point out one comment. So Tom Frost has said it feels like we're getting a bonus Friday. I like that.
You can watch back on Friday.
Right, so yeah, the running order this time. So this beer that Wayne's just about to pour, we're going to have Hop Sessions version 001, which is a 4.5% hop changing pale. What that means we'll come to shortly. We're then following that up with Unbelievable Hef, which is a 5.2% kind of Soccer Saturday themed wheat beer. We've then got the second iteration of Evis Juice, which is a 5.5% grapefruit APA, but most of you will not have encountered on its first release because it was a very, very limited release. And then we conclude with the collab that we brewed this time last month with Brass Castle, which is a 6.8% cold IPA called Whoopi Coldberg. Also in the pack this month, depending on which option you've gone for, you may have got Goose Willis, so the return of one of our very early core beers. Ginger Beast, which is a beer that we brew on behalf of Guaylo, but we're so proud of, we wanted you to taste it. And it's All Gone Pete Tonka, which is a beer that I went to Dundee to brew with 71 Brewing, which is a Tonka and cacao stout, imperial stout, coming in at a mere 12%. Yes, so as we go through each of these beers, we will, as always, be going through the recipe, the concept, what might be unique about it in terms of the production methodology, how we came up with the name, etc. And as Wayne has already said, we need your questions. We want this to be as interactive as it can possibly be. So to make that happen, you have the ability to put your questions below the feed. I think we'll only be seeing the questions if you're on the StreamYard feed? Or do you pull from all platforms?
You can pull from all platforms, yeah.
Wow, that's some clever shit.
It's even fancy. It shows you which platform and the little logo on where they've come
wow.
from. So who wants to be our first ever Facebook comment on
I'm so not down with the kids. Somebody still needs to explain to me what TikTok is.
I saw you filming your own dances to it the other day, so
yeah,
not true.
If only, or maybe not. So we also have a couple of guests this time. So we need questions in for the guests. So we've got Dan from Adnams, we've got James from Brew, and we've got our very own head brewer, Tom. So if you've got any questions for any of those, get them into us now for when their sessions come up. As we go along, we'll be talking through a specialist subject. We will be starting out with highlights of the last month for each of us after the first beer. We then go on to the Adnams collab and the heritage of Adnams. We then go on to Brew, and what makes them a very, very similar brewery in terms of ethos and approach to what we do. And then finally, we conclude with what you can expect in the next month in terms of events and beers. So if you want to be in the audience, if you have any feedback for us, we need you to get that through to info@brewyork.co.uk. And it's particularly important this month, so we are trying a few new things. We're doing it on a Wednesday. We're bringing in some virtual guests. So we need to know how well this works, and if there's things you would change or things that you would be happy to see again next time. So info@brewyork.co.uk if you have any thoughts on any of those.
I think Ant forgot his bulldog clips today because each of these pages is taped on with the most noisy tape ever.
I thought he did that very delicately, actually.
Yeah. He got away with it. No one noticed.
So, right, we're on to beer number one. And
Hop Sessions 001.
Yeah, and we changed the running order. Ordinarily, Wayne would go first and I would go second. But Wayne has a particular love of the second beer. So I'm doing the first beer. So it's called Hop Sessions 001. And I love the fact that we call it 001. So I think this was Rachel, our head of marketing, who obviously has incredible faith in what we're doing with this beer, because we're going to get into 3 digits with it, apparently.
The even funnier thing is people actually order it as that. So I was working really hard recently, covering Daisy's holiday at Hanley Tap, and a customer comes up and asks for Hop Sessions 001. I was like, you can just call it Hop Sessions if you want, mate. There's no other variants on.
Not yet,
but,
not yet, but there will be. There will be. So yeah, it's going to be a hop changing pale where we change the hops each time that we brew it. And the kind of origination of this beer is we did a collab recently with Salt. It was called Hop Busters. We really loved what we did with that beer over the last few years. We've really focused on developing our pale beer. And I think the best, certainly one of the best that we've done has been Hop Busters. So we've kind of taken the base grain recipe from that and the approach to brewing that we take from that particular beer, and then we're changing out the hops each time. So this time we've gone with Wayne's Nemesis, which is Sabro on the hot side, and we put some in right at the start of fermentation, which encourages an interaction between the yeast and the hops to develop more unique flavours. And then we've dry hopped it at the end of fermentation with Nectaron, which is a New Zealand hop, which is kind of peachy, hence the name Nectaron, kind of like nectarines. And Mosaic, which is known to be kind of berry-like, I guess, or bubblegum would be the best description of that one.
So it is a funny one because I genuinely am not a huge fan of Sabro. It's been my Marmite hop for a while, but if it's used in what I feel is the right way, it kind of works pretty well, and I really enjoy this Hop Sessions. So yeah, if I hadn't have read that it had Sabro in it, it probably wouldn't have worried me as much to start with. But I think that the guys have done a really good job with this. I think the Sabro's really helping with the flavour of the beer without actually overpowering it and becoming the nasty tasting Sabro beer that I feared it would be.
That fake pineapple thing.
Yeah, or like the woody character and stuff that it can sometimes give beers. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and it's probably the most drank beer I've had. What's the right way to say that? The beer I've drank the most of out of our beers in the last couple of weeks, because it's 4.5%. It's really easy going. It's not. It's a like modern style New England hazy without being too sweet on the mouthfeel. I think sometimes New Englands can end up with too much residual sweetness, and that's what I don't enjoy about them. But I think we've done a good job. Well, the guys have done a good job with this one.
They have indeed. So each time we release this, the branding's going to change, the hop combination's going to change. So we'd love to hear your feedback on each of the versions. We're not the first to attempt this kind of thing. It's not even the first time that we've tried to do this kind of thing. You may remember we had a beer in our range called Expander, and we would change up the hops each time with that, but that was cask only. What we're doing with this is you're only going to get this in keg, you're only going to get this in cans, so a slight difference to what we've done previously there.
With our experimental cask range at the moment, the way we do that is in the Make It series. So it started off with single hop varieties, so Make It Mosaic, Make It Simcoe, and the different ones we've done. At some point, we're going to start blending some hops up there as well, so you'll get to try different combos out. I think it really works well if you're interested in certain hop varieties. You can see how they work in that style really well.
Indeed, yeah, really good when there's a new hop that's come to market and you've only ever read about it, you've never actually tasted it yourself. So when that happens, it's great to only work with that hop and learn the character of that hop. So then you learn the way in which to use it in the future. Okay, so now we move on to our highlights of the last month. So personally for you, Ern, it would be?
So on a personal note, FA Cup weekend. Don't worry, Jay, I'm not going to mention the Man City score. And
You kind of just did though.
but went to Sal's sister's birthday party, so we had a nice barbecue, had a few beers, and had a really good day. So that was nice to get out of work for a weekend. And then on a work basis, did the pop-up bar at the rugby club for the summer bash. That was a lot of fun. So Joe or Joanna from our sales team came down to help along with Sal, my partner, and they like to dance around and have fun. I was just focused on the pouring the beer.
Oh, you love dancing.
Yeah, I did lots of dancing.
Yeah, can't hold him back. Wayne's always dancing.
But that was a really cool event. It was nice to hear the direct feedback from all the rugby fans who really liked what we've done with the beers there.
I heard it was not the best of turnouts, not compared to when they've hosted it in two different places before, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it didn't impact us too much because I don't think we'd have been able to cope with huge volumes. But yeah, I think they had about 6,000 fans.
That's not too bad.
Yeah. So no, it certainly wasn't as well attended as I'd hoped, but it was still good for us because there was only 2 bars outside in the fan zone, and we were one of them.
Perfect. Right, so before I go on to my highlights, Tom, do you want to come forward and start getting mic'd up, ready to come on camera? So my highlights of the last month, personally, I'm being really greedy on both personal and work levels here.
Greedy
so, yeah, well, that's what my wife calls me, greedy Gravin. So personally, I had a lovely weekend with my wife, her sister and brother-in-law in Pocklington. Got to go to our bar, got to actually go to lots of bars in Pocklington. And I have definitely concluded that we run the best bar in Pocklington. Yeah, anyway, we'll leave that one there. And then I was at Download Festival this weekend, just gone, which was absolutely incredible. I am totally frazzled. They really need to get a source of shade at that festival, but the music was incredible.
What was your favourite band?
What was my favourite band? Oh, I wonder. Who headlined on the Sunday to close out the festival? None other than Slipknot, my favourite band. And then on a work level, so similarly, I've been doing a kind of pop-up bar with Pete, who's controlling the cameras tonight. We got to do a little bar in York Minster, where they were doing show tunes, or film tunes rather, by candlelight. So we got to do the bar before and during the interval, and then we got to actually go in and listen to the music. And it was absolutely beautiful. The acoustics in that building are not surprisingly amazing. Surprisingly not amazing even. And then also work-wise, just before Download Festival, I got down to Cambridge and got to do our return collab with Pastore, and the team were superbly hospitable, really lovely, and Nadia, and we had a beautiful time with those guys. So Tom is now going to join us on camera and tell you about his highlights of the last month.
It wouldn't be not too much of you.
Not no.
Yeah, so like Wayne said, you've not really done much recently, have you?
Loads of time off work.
Loads of time.
No
Loads of
like
time.
major life-changing events. And like that.
Yeah. I got married last month, so that's quite a big. No, yeah, obviously Naomi's sat over there. So yeah, no, we went. Just had a very small little family wedding, which was nice. So, and then we went to Singapore.
Yeah, we all noticed we weren't invited.
Yeah, Singapore and Bali for our honeymoon. So that was good. Yeah, and I took probably the most time off that I since being a brewer. I don't know. It's always difficult to take time off when you're in production and doing, because you can't always spare the people. So, but I had probably the best part of 3 and a bit weeks off, which is mad. but really nice that these two let me do that. So, yeah, which is really good, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, never good to have you away for that long, but I did enjoy my return to the shop floor for a little while. That was good fun.
Not sure all the team enjoyed it as much as you did.
Fair, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So no, that was good. And then from a work point of view, I went down to London last week before last, which was like so. I spent most of my brewing career in London, so it was really nice to go back down there and brew with Aura, who are kind of Walthamstow way. So we did. They're doing a gelato, like they're Italian brewery, and they're doing a gelato series, so an Italian ice cream series. And we did a caramel and pistachio mild, which has come out a little bit stronger than I think.
Not so mild.
Not so mild. Yeah, so that was nice. And they took me to the Black Horse Road mile. So I used to work in the Bermondsey mile, and I think the Black Horse one is now kind of taken over that in terms of where to go to drink beer in London. So if you have a chance to go drink there, I'd recommend it. I think
it's the more drinkers one rather than the stag do one now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what Bermondsey's become.
Yeah, so I think our beer is going to be, our collab beer will be released in the next couple of weeks, and they are canning it. I did find that out today. So
so you guys at home will be able to enjoy that in next month's box.
Yeah.
Indeed. Can I make a request? I think we're going to have to risk some background noise and have that door open. We need some airflow in this room.
There's not going to be much background noise. I won't worry too much. But yes, the curtain behind me, it's like being sat in front of a radiator. The sun bled.
But yeah, sorry to those of you watching online, but it's either that or you watch us melt on camera.
Yeah. It's like Lee's back in his tent at Download Festival.
yeah.
It's starting to feel like that.
A couple of traffic lads.
Yeah, exactly.
Just exactly like you.
Right.
Okay. On that note.
So I think we've done highlights. So I think we're on to the next beer. So if we could get. Oh no, yeah, good point.
Questions first.
We do ordinarily do questions between beers, don't we?
Yeah.
So how are we doing for questions?
Yeah, we've got a couple.
So they're going to start flashing up on screen. How many? Well, apparently at least 100, given we've gone with 3 digits.
Yeah.
So the question was, how many hop sessions variations are you envisaging making? Yeah.
Depends how quickly you guys all buy it, because we want to do it in small batches, limited release. If there's a particularly favourite that comes out, we can always find a way of rebrewing that and coming up with a real name for it. So we'll always keep our eye on that. But it's really good for us. It's good to experiment, to see what hop varieties work really well together. And yeah, selfishly, we like most of you guys at home, we like variety, we like change.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to try it out.
So we were talking the other day that we need to do something special for the 007, given we've gone with the 3 digits.
Yeah.
But apparently, I think it's MGM Studios sue anybody that uses 007 on anything. So, just a little bit. And it wouldn't exactly be the first legal letter we've ever had, would it? So.
Given we did a beer called Live and Let Pie, I think the 007 beer is probably not too bad.
Yeah, indeed.
No, I reckon the way that I want to do it is just pick 3 hops, and they're the hops we're going to go for. So I don't think there'll be anything mental like that. Well, soon we'll do something a bit funny with hop where we use probably too many hops. But 3 hops is kind of what I like to do.
Oh, right.
As do I.
Yeah, and I think it works. So yeah, and I don't know. We've worked, as these two said earlier, we've worked really hard on our pale ales, and I'm super happy with them. And
one thing we're going to be doing next year is, at the minute, most of our hop supply comes from one supplier, and we did that to ensure we got what we needed and to get the best price. But that gives us limited access to what's out there. So for next year, we're actually in talks with a couple of other suppliers to get a wider access to some more unique hops that you may not have seen us work with previously.
yeah. Having said that, though, Dan, he can still hear me. Can he?
Yeah.
He can hear you, yeah. He just can't talk right yet.
Yeah, I'm very, very jealous of the way that they choose hops and pick hops. Like, obviously, Adnams, being quite a bit bigger than us, have quite a lot more say in what they get, which I think is any brewer's kind of dream, I suppose. So maybe one day we'll get that big and we can go hand pick.
Yeah, a few years to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
But But maybe we pick up on that again when
Yeah.
Dan's on camera.
Any other questions? Oh, we got another one.
Why have we moved to a Wednesday?
That's a real good question, Derek. Basically, a couple of reasons. One of the things is we want to, it sounds a bit funny because a lot of our regulars like to tune in on a Friday, but we have a lot of people who can't join us on a Friday because they do other things. They spend time with their family, they go out with their friends. So one of the things we thought we'd try is just to see if a midweek would make any difference, if we get the audience, live audience figures up, because you can still watch back on a Friday. And we're going to try and make sure that we still interact with comments that are left on the videos if you watch on another day. But also, it's been 3 years now, and I also would like my Fridays back as well, please. Selfishly, I do like doing these things, and we do a lot more at this time of year in particular. We do a lot more festivals and events. So we spend our time out and about interacting with you guys at these different festivals. But I think I might get in a lot of trouble if I don't start taking some more time to spend with my family and my friends. So. Yeah, from a selfish perspective, it's trying to get some of our weekends back, but also we will still be doing more and more things with you guys when we're especially this time of the year.
So it's something we've spoken about for maybe up to 6 months about trialing, because during the pandemic, Fridays worked really well because you didn't have the alternative of the pub. Now you do have the alternative of the pub, and I cannot blame you for going to the pub instead of watching what ugly buggers do.
Yeah.
So we thought if we try doing it midweek, maybe we can get the numbers up again. And Wayne's right about personal life occasionally getting in the way. I'm playing poker this Friday. I have an annual game with some people I used to work with. And last year, I double booked myself and I didn't join their game because I came and did this. But this year, I can't do that to them again. So we've moved it to a midweek as a trial. And we're not saying it's definitely staying as midweek. We want to hear your feedback. We want to see how it works. We want to see what it does in terms of the viewer numbers. When we get to the end of the session, you'll see that we have made no commitment on the date for next month because we need to hear your feedback first. So make sure you get that through.
And in terms of the scale of this, we have typically on a Friday live session, we have around 50 or 60 people joining us live, and then watching back is 400 or 500 people after the whole event. In COVID, when you were all locked down, you couldn't go to the pub. We were having 200 to 300 people join us for the live session. So the swings changed, and for obvious reasons. People do have work and stuff again and other commitments, but I still feel like there's. You don't have to drink all 4 beers on the live session. You can still join and have 1 beer and throw your questions in and then enjoy the rest of the weekend. But I think that we'll see. We'll see how these turn out. I still feel there's more we can do on midweek to interact with you guys more.
Cool. Yeah, hopefully you understand our reasoning and why we would want to try something different and see what that might mean. So, Belinda Morley, will we see either or both of you at Nottingham Craft Beer Festival over the weekend? You won't see any of us. If you're lucky, you might see Pete, who's going to be there briefly.
Pete's unlucky. They're not unlucky because the festival's amazing. So myself and Pete
you're going to Nottingham briefly, aren't you?
No, he's not.
I thought you were driving the van.
No. So basically,
those plans have changed.
The festival was brilliant last year. Myself, Pete, did the festival along with Monty, who used to work in our finance team, and we were both the first names on the list for this year because we thought it would be a great event to do again. And then all of the team put their names forward and asked if they could do it. So we stepped away to let the rest of the team do it. So we've got Jack joining us from the production team.
Yeah.
We've got Jess. Jess is joining from the sales team, Joanna, hopefully, from the sales team, and then Michael from our POC bar, and Jess's partner, I don't know his name.
Yeah. What's nice from my point of view is we've made a big effort. Well, I feel like we always make an effort, but it's rare now that you get a brewer kind of serving you beer, and Jack. So yeah, Jack's our apprentice brewer, and I think he's kind of the self-proclaimed best not barman in the world. Daisy, our taproom manager, not shaking her head, nodding along. But yeah, he's great fun. So if you're at the festival, have a chat with him, ask him about what we're doing.
Grill him about his homebrew and
Yeah.
his homebrew experience, with sharing them with me.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting story for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, he's great.
It wasn't a good first reaction.
I'm not coming.
Yeah, but no, yeah, so we got a lot of the team there.
But
should be
yeah,
good.
the YouTube stream was originally supposed to be this Friday, and Lee couldn't make it, like you mentioned, because of the poker. I was going to go to Nottingham, but when we had so many people step forward, we've got so many events coming up, we have to kind of get the balance right, where otherwise I'd be away every weekend. But it is an awesome festival, so if you haven't got tickets already and you live nearby, you should definitely go. It's on this same location as Neon Raptor, where their brewery tap room is. So they tend to have they open their tap room to put their bar in. It's just a lot of fun, and there's quite a lot of really cool bars nearby as well. So the guys, what's the big brewery called, from Castle Rock? Castle Rock have got loads of really great pubs in Nottingham, so you get to try some decent beers there as well.
Yeah, especially that one with the boat in it, whatever that's called. That's good.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Ship in.
No, it's got a barge in the middle of it.
It's
It's called something.
Barge
like-
bar.
Oh, what's it called? Somebody in the comments will be able to tell us what the name of that pub is. A pub in Nottingham that has a barge right in the middle of it.
Noah's Ark.
It's not Noah's Ark.
I don't know it. I've never been.
That's really going to bug me, but someone will know. Failing that, you have Google.
Yeah.
What? It's not the bargeist, no. Question from Ant on hop sessions. Will you do just single hop brews to limelight the characteristics of each? Not with that particular one, but do you want to go back through the Make It series?
Ooh, I've got one to share with you guys actually.
Yeah, so this the hop sessions was, I want it to kind of be the antithesis of the Make It series. Is kind of, it's not quite like Smash, but it's that kind of thing where it's just single hop, cask beer.
We should explain the term Smash.
Smash,
Single malt and single hop is what
Yeah.
that means.
So that was kind of, that is really to showcase a single varietal. Hop sessions isn't that. I think hop set. I just want to. I think 3 is kind of what I'd be looking for each time, really. So three hops each time. Change the hops each time, and I think you get better balance and get better. It's what I like to do.
If I could kind of summarize, so the Make It series is about us as the brewer understanding the characteristics of an individual hop, and you as the consumer getting to know what that hop can give you. Whereas this is about us trying different hop combinations and then different ratios within those combinations, trying to strike what we consider to be the best flavor.
What would be a cool, this isn't saying we're going to do this, by the way, but what would be a cool one is if we got to a series where we did like maybe 3 in a row with the same 3 hops, but in completely different proportions to illustrate how that can massively change a beer.
Because it really can, because certain hops work really well on their own. Some people will say Citra is one of them. For me, Citra is good on its own, but you put just a little bit of something else with it, and it performs so much better.
It's interesting you say that, because on our list this year, hence why we've got Adnams joining us in a second, we're working with some amazing heritage breweries who've been around, to be doing this, doing a great job for so long. Breweries that we've drank their beers and really looked up to, and Adnams being one of them. But we've also, if I was to say a single hop Citra beer, who would you typically think of?
Well, there's 2. There's Oakham for Citra, but they were not the first.
Oh no,
Fine Ales were the first to use Citra in the country.
in Yard, but also, and then down south, the one in Brighton that was bought.
Dark Star
Hophead as well was the other one. But I had an interesting phone call today, and a potential collab with Oakham could happen soon. If we can, we'll get to meet the guys soon, and hopefully we can
that'd be
that
good.
could be really cool. So that's breaking news. The guys from Oakham don't know this yet, but you guys do. So yeah, hopefully that'll pan out in the next couple of months.
What's that phrase for where you say it and you make it happen?
Oh yeah, you believe you someone at home tell us.
Materialize? It's not that. What is it?
Manifest.
Manifest.
It.
Yeah, you just manifested the collab.
Yeah, just make it up on the fly. So second beer. And well, actually, Adam's joining us in a bit, isn't he?
Yeah.
Sorry, Dan.
That was a little dig at Pete, who accidentally said Adam earlier when it should have been Dan.
So second beer is Unbelievable Hef.
Yeah.
So this beer came about from, we don't make wheat beers very often in the brewery. We do like them, but we haven't really been able to sell them in the past. We did a really cool beer. What was it called? Raspberry Beret. Raspberry. And it was a raspberry wheat beer, and it was pretty interesting beer. It wasn't blow your mind, but I've probably said this on our live stream before.
I've got a story about that beer.
Well, when the guy came up to me,
Yeah.
So we were stood outside a festival at the Bluebell on Warmgate, and a guy went and spoke to the landlord at the Bluebell and asked who Brew York were, and we weren't very old at the time, and he asked John, the landlord, to introduce him to myself and Lee, and Lee was talking to someone, so he brought him across to me, and the guy's like, "Oh, did you make this beer?" I was like, "Yeah, I did." He's like, "Oh, it's the worst beer I've ever had in my life." I was like, "So you went out of your way to find out who we were?"
I was still with you at the time. Do you remember?
And you wanted to punch him, I know.
Yeah. No, I just said, "When I'm off to the bar, you can deal with him."
So that wasn't the reason we didn't do a wheat beer since. Yeah, we cry in the corner whenever anyone mentions wheat beer. But
the reason was more that
commercially, they're not.
they've never been big sellers for us. We're only in England. We're not a million miles away from Germany, where you can get an amazing array of incredibly well-produced wheat beers. But I think it was on our travels on the continent when we were drinking Schneiderweiss and things, and kind of craved for it. And thought maybe it's time we have another crack.
It was when we were in Finland. So we were in Helsinki last year, and the festival we went to is called Hazewave. It was a really cool festival. And they put us up in a really nice hotel with a cool roof terrace. And everything in Finland's expensive anyway. But we went to the bar, and it was like £10 for a bottle of Schneiderweiss. Was it Schneiderweiss? Oh, it might have been.
No, it was Weissstefan.
Weissstefan, yeah. And but it was the best tasting wheat beer I'd had in a long time, and just enjoying it in the sun. And I thought, if we can do something anywhere near as good as this, and when the weather's right, this beer could be really popular for us. And then I think it was Sam, was it, who came up with the name? Probably. She comes up with most of our names.
I was Joe from London.
Oh, was it Joe?
So our London sales rep came up with a name for this one.
So yeah, I thought it was a great name, and the beer tastes great, especially like when the weather's nice. Yeah. And I was really pleased with how it turned out, and the sales of it have been really strong as well. So I think it's not far off selling out.
You do. I think wheat beers in general are picking up. Like I see that you go to like quote unquote normal pub, normal bar now, and they'll often have wheat beers. Well, a few of them have wheat beers on, which is good.
So wheat beers are a massive part of the American craft beer scene, but they've never really been a massive part of the UK scene. And I really think that is down to the distance to Germany, because they don't have it on their doorstep. We do. We went to Allagash in New York State, Maine, and the scale on which they were producing Allagash White, they had a thing that they called the bunker room, and the size of the room we're in here. It was just the cone. The cone of one vessel would be this room, and they had about 12 of them in this one room that they called the bunker room. And that was all for this one beer.
So the beer itself's relatively, I say, simple. I don't mean to do it any disservice, but it's Pilsner malt, wheat malt, and a little bit of oats. Very small amount of oats. So you get the haze from a classic wheat beer with all that wheat and oat in it, and then the hop additions, just one hop, single hop.
Yeah, Hallertau Mittelfrüh, if I can remember correctly.
Yeah. It is indeed.
Yeah, I've done Hefs I say quite a few times. I've only ever done one once before. I've have brewed a lot more kind of Belgian wits, which like Allagash White that these guys were talking about is a Belgian wit rather than Lee and I, when we were doing this recipe, kind of we definitely went down the sort of German, just simple German route, which is good. What I will say is make sure you pour this beer properly, like a wheat beer should be. So I don't know. You get robots in Japan that do it for you. That
Swill it before you
swill it before you pour
You
it.
need to get the bottom of the can
It
out.
has got a lot of protein in it and a lot of so yeah.
Must pour some hop sessions into mine.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's good. It's I think it's gone down really well with the guys on my team, which normally when we like a beer, you guys don't like it for some reason. So
it's kind of, we call it the brewer's curse, because the brewer says, we really like this beer, and unfortunately you guys, the general public, do tend to disagree with us quite a lot. But it won't stop us doing them. Ultimately, this beer is doesn't matter what you rate on Untappd, we'll probably brew a similar beer this time next year, and maybe a slightly different name, but we'll yes. So speaking of the name, very quickly, so it actually got us an introduction to the Kamara management team. So we're actually hoping to do a beer with them soon, and in the meantime, we're going to be making a little bit of a donation to Marie Curie Cancer Research.
So Chris, an amazing guy, is currently working with Marie Curie and has just been to 10 Downing Street to present a petition for people who are diagnosed as terminally ill, being able to get early access to their pension funds. So he's just done that on behalf of Marie Curie. So hopefully the government will listen. It seems like a no-brainer. Why would you not allow that to happen? So we've made a small donation there, and like Wayne says, we're going to work with them again in the future to do another beer to perhaps contribute to Marie Curie again. If not them, then another worthy cause of Chris's choosing.
So on that note, let's move on swiftly and bring in Dan.
So while we bring Dan on, just one thing we've not really talked about is the flavour profile of a wheat beer is quite unique.
Well, we haven't mentioned the yeast as well, which is a huge contributor to that flavour profile.
Yeah. So there's two main things that are driving the flavour in here, which is you've used a lot of wheat, so that's going to give a big bready characteristic to the beer. And then you're using a particular type of yeast, which is going to give what kind of character, Tom?
Well,
I thought you were lined up for that.
No,
one.
I am lined up.
Banana,
kind of banana clove. A big, like the wheat will get like. I can never pronounce this. I'm terrible at pronouncing specific brewing words. Given my job, I should be a little bit better at. But ferulic acid, so kind of that slightly phenolic kind of thing. This is obviously it's a German Hefeweizen. You're kind of thinking your banana clovey type thing. Wit, Belgian wits, you're more thinking like your bubblegummy type thing, or they can even be softer. So I quite like using kind of like an Abbey yeast for that kind of thing, which I know that Dan at Adnams gave me a bottle of their Belgian triple, which was lovely, really good.
I saw that. I saw a bottle in the
fridge.
I'm guessing that.
I saw a bottle in the fridge, but then they'd gone before I got there.
They got absolutely. All of my brewing team drank them very swiftly after they were left, which is good. But so German wheat beer, kind of your banana clove kind of thing. For like the sort of estery kind of phenolic kind of profile is what you want.
It's a bit of a funny one because typically in pale ales and IPAs and stuff like that, this is kind of the opposite to what you want. So you don't have to a clean flavour, which accentuates the hops. Yeah. And then sometimes if something goes wrong, you can start getting some of these flavour profiles through, and that's not obviously sought after.
No. Yeah, we've poured beers down the drain before that have ended up tasting like this.
Yeah, a lot. Wasn't a lot of wild yeast.
Wild yeast taste.
Can give that. Same with kind of sort of saison-y kind of yeast that has that kind of
farmhousey, funky flavour.
Yeah, and it's not quite that. It's not the proper phenol thing you get from saison yeast, but I don't know. It is. Wheat beers are the Marmite of the beer world. They really like. You either like that taste or you don't like that taste. But what we've done here is hopefully like a really classic.
Which would you says? Sorry, more Marmite says on our wheat beer.
For me, wheat beer, but
for me, it says.
That's what it says on
I guess given your heritage, saisons were your go-to beer.
They were, and like that, like sort of, I spent best part of 3 years of my life brewing kind of Belgian beers in London. So, yeah. But one of the I did some crazy stuff at my first brewery, Dorking. Like we had Rausch beer on cask.
Wow.
And it sold,
Wow.
and it was
Was it not smoke enough for some people? Though?
It was probably not smoky enough. So
And 100% smoke malt, like Schlenk.
it wasn't. It was very small amount of smoke malt. So it's probably it was. I don't know. I'd maybe like to. It would never sell though. If we didn't have to sell it, I'd like to revisit it because I drink it.
We don't. We can get the 20-litre pilot kit.
Yeah.
You can make yourself half a cat.
But this, I don't know. Can I? I'm going to say it. You can tell me off later. But I think we are going to try and do some more stuff for Oktoberfest this year.
Yeah, definitely. We're quite excited about this because
it's gone. Yeah.
It's something that I was born in Germany, so being a German, I really want to get more involved. I'm not actually German, but I've been wanting to do more of Oktoberfest themed stuff, and we've always wanted to do a specific fest beer, and then being scared that we can't sell a whole batch of it. Whereas we're very confident this year because we're working quite closely with a Oktoberfest festival.
So an event company that runs York's biggest Oktoberfest festival.
So we're hoping that in doing so, we can brew some decent batches of some really good,
Fest beer, Mazan.
Yeah, and we're linking from this as well. Like we do 2 lagers now as well, which is for a brewery of our size is frankly mad, but they're both very, very good lagers, and I'm really proud of. We can do. Yeah, I think we've kind of hit a niche of doing these kind of sort of continental style beers, and we're really good at them, and that's kind of down to the team we've got, but also the equipment and
water treatment as well as getting the right things. So I think we need to move on because I told Dan that we'd be bringing him on.
Sorry, Dan.
10 minutes ago, he's probably sat waiting to start talking to us.
You'll have realised by now we like a waffle.
Yeah, Belgian waffle.
Yeah.
There
we go. Yeah. Right, so Pete, through the wizardry of this technology, there we go. That's done.
I'll do a round of applause. Thanks for patiently waiting for us in the wing while hopefully you on the double IPA yet?
I am actually, yeah. I'm probably going to like a waffle as well.
So this is Dan. Dan, along with his colleague Connor, came and joined us. What would it be now? 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
And we brewed together. But before we get into that beer, why don't you tell everybody that's in the room and watching a little bit about Adnams?
Well, the short blurb, yeah. Well, no. Firstly, thanks for having us here virtually. Yeah, not in the same room. You're all looking very peachy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the curtains or.
It does look. Lee likes to call this room the boudoir, and if I'm looking on the screen now and seeing that like red light themed room,
It does look like
it does look like a bit of a boudoir. Interesting one.
So yeah, thanks for having us, and so a little bit of history about Adnams. I guess we talk about Adnams as a brewery sort of being 150 years old, but the brewery actually was there before Adnams, and there were 2 brothers, George and Ernest, who bought the brewery in sort of 1872, but the brewery was there sort of since the 1600s, and there's kind of a long history of sort of continuous brewing in Southwold. So we've so yeah. Well,
Ben was joking that I was born then.
No, you weren't even born.
I weren't even born. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
older than
Um,
sorry.
but you have some good history yourself, don't you? Like when you invited us down a couple of weeks ago and we did the collab, you've got a nice history with where your tap room is, where you're sitting now, and there's some sort of continuous kind of brewing. And
That means that this room, this building that we're in now, used to be a brewery. It was a tower brewery. So what is the beer hall was the tank farm room, and what is above us was where they would make the beer, and then right down at the bottom was the malting facility.
What was it called?
Tadcaster Tower Brewery.
Yeah.
so that's a nice piece of history anyway. So so in 150 years, in a nutshell, we're sort of we were traditionally a cask ale brewer. I guess last 20 years we've gone on quite a bit of a journey, I guess. In the 80s, as cask ale sort of made a resurgence, there was sort of more investment in the cask sort of packaging facility, and then sort of in the sort of mid noughties, we sort of started on our sort of sustainability journey. So before I started in sort of 2011. They sort of built the eco distribution center in 2005, and on the back of that, lots of companies sort of approached us on projects because they sort of saw us as someone who would be prepared to be innovative and take on ideas. Then we had a new brew house put in 2007, and then we've had sort of as the sort of shift from sort of cask to keg, we put in sort of facilities to make bright beer on site. So yeah, I mean historically we were a big cask ale brewer. That was what our bread and butter was. Yeah, some old recipes.
How many firkins do you have in your fleet?
Oh, crikey!
That's the steel casks that,
Yeah.
typically casks that we fill and sell to the landlords. And brewery, when we first started, we were told that we needed about 400-ish for our original 10-barrel brew house. Not many breweries own them these days, but obviously all the breweries have owned these for years, which and as they grow, they get more and more. So you guys must have a ridiculously high.
I mean, that's going in the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, surely.
Yeah, we have quite a few. Yeah, and I guess I can't remember if it was about 5 years ago. Obviously signed up with the BPPA about getting rid of aluminium. So a lot of our old casks were aluminium. So we've got a relatively new population of casks as well. In fact, when I first where I sort of grew up in Bungay, which is where I'm from, which isn't far from Southwold, where Adnams Brewery is on the east coast in Suffolk. We had some old Adnams barrels when they got rid of barrels about sort of 30 years ago, or sort of 20.
That was the question I was about to ask, is Kildekins are still in common use in the UK, but they're very difficult for draymen and landlords to move about because they're 144 pints. They weigh a good 100 kilograms more than that, aren't they? So
they're about 200 kilos.
So they weigh a lot, and a barrel is twice the size of a Kildekin.
Yeah.
So barrels are what we typically fill. We still use them for our barrel aged beer. 200 plus litres. But yeah, not very practical for deliveries. No one's sellers of the infrastructure anymore to cope with them. Even Kildekins put a lot of pressure on the seller. But every year at the Great British Beer Festival, they give us a call and say, "Can we deliver them in Kildekins?" Well, brilliant. Let's dig the stock out, clean them, and send them down to the only customers who orders Kildekins.
Yeah, I was going to say the only reason we own Kildekins is to send beer to the Great British Beer Festival.
Yeah.
It's quite apt.
Yeah.
One year we went down and did GBBF and London Craft Beer Festival in a weekend, and I drove the beers down in our van, and I was wearing my flip-flops, and I unloaded the Kildekins myself out of the van in a pair of flip-flops. I think people were just shaking their head in disbelief at me at the time, but
I think the word you're looking for is idiots.
it was hot. I couldn't wear trainers and that weather.
Yeah. Talking about kegs and casks, though, after you left last week, I noticed that we have actually got a couple of Adnams kegs in our yard.
Yeah,
we have.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Jake.
So we should have. Someone must have accidentally bought an e-cask and picked them up, and
Because they have
the orange.
Are yours orange branded? Yeah, they are, aren't they?
Yeah. They were. Yeah.
So yeah, I should. We'll give you them back.
Yeah.
So you briefly mentioned where you grew up, because I think that's an interesting point. Because your story, you were kind of always destined to work in beer, weren't you? Really?
Yeah. So I sort of my stepdad is a brewer, and the pub that I sort of grew up around, they brewed their own beer, you know, just for the premises, sort of like a 9-barrel plant, thirsty people there. And the guy who originally set the pub up, he sort of did home brewing basically in the sort of 80s. He was kind of, he lived in a pub which was called the Green Dragon, which wasn't a pub at the time, in Bungay. And it had an old cellar, so he did the brewing there. And people used to turn up with wheelbarrows, you know, he was doing serious volumes, and then HMRC caught wind, and he had to go legit. So they bought a pub called the Horse and Groom, and turned it into the Green Dragon, and started the brewery up. So that was kind of sort of destined to be in beer. And going back to the barrels, there's kind of funny anecdote when there was a guy who turned up to be sort of strongest man of the UK, you know, those kind of, and he was after some barrels to do some lifting, and I'm going to fill them up with water and, you know, train and all the, and then he asked, where's the handles on them? And I was like, well, you know, nobody actually picks them up. There's no handles on them.
That is the thing that always amuses me nowadays, that like people, because there are handles on them, people carry them. They're shaped like that for a reason. They do roll. And
we've really grown our packaging team recently, and I've got a few new starters, and learned quite quickly that one of them was very scared of his own blood, because he picked up a keg with the handles, and the handles are like, because no one expects you to use them, I don't think they either machine them very well, so they're so sharp you just cut yourself.
Well, one of the major providers is ECAT, and some of them they've kind of curled it round so it's a nice smooth edge. Some of them they've let the metal just go straight down, so you grab it and it just slices into your hands.
So a lot of people
really nice.
Probably what it's ridiculous, because these units, these containers get such a beating. They're drop down cellars, they get dents here, there, and everywhere. And the handles that they shape onto them at the top, sometimes just pure metal hanging out. So put your hands under to lift it. It's like lifting it, right?
Designed by masochists.
Exactly, yeah. So you learn quite quickly in brewing not to pick something up by the thing it's designed to be picked up by.
Or wear
gloves, yeah.
Anyway, we should move on. We should talk about the beer that we brewed together. And I think let's go with the origin about how this came about. So we have a supplier in common called Charles Farren. They specialise in UK hops, amongst other things. They do supply kind of whole of market, whole like malt, everything. And our rep is a lovely lady called Beth, and she came to see Tom and I. And she said, I'm going down to Adnams tomorrow. And I said, well, tell them we think they're bloody amazing and that we'd love to work with them. So she did exactly that. And then Dan and I got put in touch. And then Tom and I had a video call. And ordinarily it would take a little while to work out what you're going to brew together. But we were just so on the same page about what we wanted to do. We kind of thrashed it out in about, 60 minutes? Worked out what we wanted to do. And I think we came up with a really good concept. Yeah. So which one of you two wants to talk about the concept of what we did?
Well, I'll begin just to say that it was very refreshing to sort of like add to thrashing it out very quickly. And that video call was really nice, because you sort of were very forward about wanting to learn stuff about, collaborations in general, about sharing information, aren't they, and learning something new. And you were so open, and we'll talk about the yeast in a minute, but you were so adamant that you wanted to use our yeast. No, it was. I thought it was a very. I really enjoyed that process, and I'll let Tom sort of indulge a little bit more.
So I don't think you could really categorize what we have done. it is, but we've done, it's a real kind of, in a good way, kind of a mishmash of different ideas. But obviously we worked with Beth at Fareham, so we wanted to use, we had to put some form of UK hop in it. So we've
Much
gone.
that Lee's discussed.
Yeah, well, yeah.
We've converted him now.
No,
Yeah.
Farehams have converted me in recent years to some of the more modern varieties, of which one is
Harlequin. So one of the kind of hot side charges was Harlequin. And then in a kind of nice way, funny way, whatever way you want to put it, we kind of left it at that and then just went with some kind of big American hops. So grist wise, we've kind of gone fairly traditional, I would say, with it in some respects.
Well, we were
So,
very much led by you, Dan, on that one.
Yeah.
There was a favourite kind of ratio of different things that you like to work with, and we went with
Yeah,
that.
it's something something that it's a very historic kind of grist ratio that you know, people have employed over the years, and sort of brown malt obviously has a long history. I guess obviously over the years, you know, the specification to brown malt has changed, and historically it would have had a lot of enzymatic power, and you could have used it to break down all the sugars in the mash once upon a time. And then amber malt, equally very sort of historic malt, but again probably has changed a little bit since sort of the 1800s. But that kind of classic sort of amber and brown malt sort of combination is something that I really love. We've used it in our, you know, we have it in some of our historic beers. So it's something that I feel, yeah, I feel is quite historic and sort of a good backbone, and yeah, in sort of smaller amounts. I think it won't necessarily mask any hop flavors, but has a sort of synergistic effect and adds good layers to the beer. So
It's going to be really interesting on this, because I don't know too much about the beer besides what we're talking about
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
But already by your description so far, I can picture the colour of the beer, and it's
Yeah, well, I
Well,
realise
no,
I haven't even said what it is yet.
Well,
so,
the
but-
thing
Yeah.
is, the thing these things we're talking about are like 2.5% level.
Yeah.
So it's for a minor flavour contribution, a minor colour contribution,
contribution,
but just to give it a little bit more than the base malt would have alone. And we missed one there because you would ordinarily work with crystal rye,
Right, yeah.
but we
Yeah.
didn't have any of that at hand, so we worked with some crystal wheat instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're
glad
doing.
you didn't say Ralph malt then.
No. So yeah, we're doing a predominantly cask only. We all can a little bit of it, but predominantly cask only pale ale. I think had we gone whole hog and not used any American hops, I think you could argue that on the face of things, it would probably seem quite like a more sort of historic, traditional English style beer. But the hopping, we've done a really, really, really modern hopping schedule on it, which Dan and I changed on the fly on the brew day, which should be good. I think we kind of
That'll have messed this up. Can take up.
yeah. No, I accounted for all of that. So so yeah, we did Harlequin, a little bit Harlequin hot side, and then we got hold of some cashmere. So we had a tiny bit of cashmere.
Which is the first time we as Brew York have worked with cashmere, but that came on Dan's recommendation, and the rub on the dirt, it smelled great.
Does it taste like jumpers?
yeah.
It's like jumpers.
You mean like what, sweaty ones, or
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh.
And then the main dry hop. Well, two things is so hot busters that we had earlier. The dry hopping schedule for hot busters and this beer is actually quite similar. To put things in perspective, so we did a little bit of hops in with the yeast. And I think you were kind of, so this might be a nice time to talk about the yeast, actually, because you have some bits that you wanted us to kind of guinea pig, which I think might be quite good.
I think the most unique thing about this beer is what we've done with the yeast. And I'm glad you used one particular word, because you said it's hard to pigeonhole this beer.
Yeah.
And it is. So we've done a bit of a catch-all. We just call it a modern pale. So that's what it's going to say on your cans next month,
And
because it is quite hard to describe what this is meant to be.
It's a real.
that's a good point though as well, because this beer, I'm guessing the recipe, everything has been designed for cask, because that's what we're intended to sell it as. But for obviously our subscribers at home or people who are joining us, we will always try, when we're doing something really unique like this with a brewery like Adnams, who we've wanted to work with for a while, we will always try and find a way of packaging some of that in a format that you can try at home. I don't believe it will taste as good in can as it will in cask, but we will try and make sure that it'll taste as close to the beer as possible. But we've always wanted to make sure that we continue what we started in lockdown, and we make the beers as available as possible. So a very, very small amount, probably enough for our subscribers and a handful of other people, maybe a bit to get down to the guys at Adnams as well. I'm sure you guys, we can send you guys some cask. I'm sure you'll find a way of serving it pretty easily.
Yeah, we'd love some casks for sure. Yeah,
we'll just pick the barrels out. We've got some barrel stock. We'll
Yeah.
I'll load them on my flip flops and.
If we get into the yeast then, so quite early on in the conversation that myself and Tom had with Dan, it was revealed that you don't just have, well, you have what you call a house strain, but it's not just one yeast.
Yeah, no, that's correct. So we sort of inherited this yeast culture from a brewery in Norwich called Morgan's Brewery, and supposedly it's a Whitbread B strain originally. So we were sort of looking after this yeast, and then sort of every so often would go back to Morgan's Brewery, get some fresh yeast whenever we needed it. But the brewery got bombed in sort of 1942 during the Blitz, and the sort of brewery disappeared, and we were sort of left with this sort of yeast culture to sort of manage. And so it's evolved. It definitely has evolved to the brewery over the years. And in the 70 years of sort of looking after it, various points in history, the yeast has been sort of banked at yeast banks. So people who aren't familiar with a yeast bank, they're tiny. You think they're like big vaults, but they're very tiny. And basically yeast is stored sort of under liquid nitrogen to sort of preserve the genomics of the yeast. So it's been cleaned up over the years, and the most recent cleanup would have been sort of 30, 40 years ago. And we sort of went down to 2 strains. So originally the culture that we were looking at had 5 major strains. So 5 still Saccharomyces cerevisiae, so still brewing yeast, but 5 different types. And there was also some subpopulations within that. So it got cleaned up to basically 2 strains, which we've inherited today. And we sort of call them class 1 and class 3. And class 3 is not very well performing in the fermentation. So we're a top fermenting brewery or top fermenting yeast. So it's kind of a bit of a superficial sort of diversification between lager and ale brewing, because Watley's did an experiment in the 1960s. But essentially ale yeast comes to the top of the fermenter, where you harvest the yeast and take it out of the fermenting beer, and a bottom fermenting yeast will go to the bottom of the tank, and you harvest it from the bottom. But that's not quite right, because class 3 is actually very flocculent and actually goes to the bottom of the fermenting vessel on its own. So long story short, we have an incredible difficult yeast management system that over the years has become very difficult to manage the balance of the yeast. So for us in-house, we need both of these strains of yeast to be 1-to-1 ratio for all the fermentation processes to work effectively. So we have what's called a continuous fermentation with class 3, and to keep it in balance. And what I noticed about sort of maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the sort of flocculation characteristics of class 3, they're beautiful disc shapes. So if you leave it to in a shaker in the lab, the yeast will sort of make these incredible sort of oval type discs, and it will just sediment out very quickly. So I thought, aha, a cylindrical conical fermenter. So a bit of history for like how we ferment. We ferment in square fermenters. The aspect ratio, so they're quite wide. The depth of the beer or the fermenting beer is very shallow compared to like a big tall vessel. And trying to harvest yeast from the bottom of these tanks is incredibly difficult. So, but when we sort of did some investment in the brewery to do keg beer, we got some cylindrical conical fermenters, and it sort of occurred to me that maybe we could still use our yeast in these fermenters, but using just class 3. So long story short, this was an amazing experiment to see if this would potentially work. So I'll hand it back to you if I've just rambled after a double dipper, and and you can fill in the gaps and tell us how the yeast harvesting works.
That was really cool. Thank you, Dan. No, great explanation. I think there was just one word in there that I should probably explain for the layman. So flocculation, not yeast. Yeah. Flocculation is about how readily the yeast binds together and then forms bigger lumps and falls out of the beer. And something that's described as highly flocculent has a tendency to bind more readily and fall out quicker, which if you're trying to clarify the beer, a fantastic thing. If you're trying to get it to finish its job of digesting the sugars, it's a really bad thing, because if it goes to the bottom, it's not where the sugars are. So a perfect brewing yeast would be medium kind of flocculent. It stays in the beer until it's done its job and then it falls out. It's not, as Dan has said, an ideal yeast for brewing with, but we like challenges. We wanted to do something different. So Dan has allowed us to take that isolated part of their yeast strain, bring it to York and brew with just that bit to see what it can do.
So we pretty much, well, not pretty much, we only have cylindrical vessels in both of our breweries. So it'll make it a little bit of I guess, a bit easier to capture that yeast if we were to use it on anything else. But the Yorkshire, well, actually I was about to call it Yorkshire Square. You said you had square-shaped fermenters, which is more traditional of a Yorkshire-based brewery. Maybe one in Massive, who's just gone out of business recently. Oh, sorry, sold the business recently.
Let's not get into that. Yeah. But our intention was to harvest the yeast from this first fermentation and then do some smaller scale trials here. But we forgot that we were doing mid-ferm dry hopping. So that's going to make that a challenge.
Yeah, I think I have done it in the past, and I think it's should be okay, but it's performed well. Like, it's better. It's interesting that kind of your lab tests versus what we've got in real life have been different enough. But we've this beer is going to be a little bit stronger than we anticipated, just because the yeast is kind of
powering through all the sugars.
It's performing a little bit better than we first anticipated.
And there's something else that we've not touched on. This is a little bit technical that we're hoping to see from this yeast. Is something called biotransformation. So most yeast and most ale yeast, all it's going to do is to produce the alcohol, and it's not going to have any kind of interaction with the hops. But certain yeasts, for example, all wine yeasts, have the ability to kind of sever bonds and release certain things. And sometimes the releasing of those things can be more flavorful compounds. So yeasts that have a particular type of enzyme called beta-glucosidase have the ability to sever glycosidic bonds and release other things into the beer. And biotransformation means an organic thing taking one organic thing and transforming it into another thing. And it can be something that starts out not massively flavorful, but becomes something quite flavorful. And we believe that this isolated part of the Adnams strain that we're working with has the ability to do that. And that's what part of this trial is about, to see if we can identify that activity. Have I summed that up okay, Dan?
Yeah, that's very very well. I like the way that you said digest as well. Yeah.
So we've still got time for questions with Dan, but we really need to get the next beer going because
Yes. Yeah.
we've very much Belgian waffled a little bit there. Not yourself, Dan.
I did warn you.
Can I be the first or not?
So if anyone's watching, tuned in, one of our guests tonight is going to be the first to do the losing the weep steak.
And do you know what? You just made his day because that means it's not him.
Well, you went first.
I went off camera. That doesn't count.
It does. Same thing. So yeah, if you can start firing some questions in, we'll start pouring Eva's juice. We'll tell you more about Eva's juice once we've done the questions.
First question in is for you, Dan. What is your favourite New York beer?
I did really enjoy. I did really enjoy the 001. Yeah, the hop sessions.
Hop sessions.
Actually, when you were on site with us, you quite smartly said that your assessment of a brewery is to drink their lager, and if they do that well, then you will have a higher opinion of them. And you did quite like what we've done with our Pilsner.
I that absolutely agreed. I thought that was fantastic. I think there's nowhere to hide in those kind of beer styles. So, as Tom was kind of saying before about the equipment, the team, I think that is reflected in those beer styles. I think,
he's obviously gone for a wee break, but on Monday we had a team get together, and he told me his proudest beer that he's brewed while he's been here is that lager. Which is really good because it's a great example of what we can do here and what him and the team can do. They've done a great job of improving our pale beer game, which starts with a lager, then works its way up.
It's true. You both said it there. I mean, to the man on the street who's drinking that, it's not going to taste like much of anything. But to get it to the point of not tasting like much of anything is goddamn difficult because you've got to be perfect on everything else.
Yeah, no, there's nowhere to hide. Like your technical ability is on show. Like that, that is, So congratulations, fantastic.
Thank you. So we have a question from the audience for Wayne and Lee. What is our favourite Adnams beer and why? I'm going proper cliche with Ghost Ship then.
I'm going alcohol-free Ghost Ship,
which is admittedly honestly one of the best alcohol-free beers on the UK market.
So in the last year, alcohol-free beer has massively upped its, probably maybe more than a year, has upped its game. But the front runner by far and away is Ghost Ship alcohol-free. The amount of people who used to always tell me to try it, and I was like, but I don't really drink alcohol-free beer. I was like, why are you telling me to try it? And I did. It was an absolutely brilliant example.
I think there are two beers on the UK market now, which are basically the exact same beer without the alcohol. You've got the Guinness Zero, and you've got the Adnams Ghost Ship. They have the same beer.
I'll let you into a secret. It comes down to having very good equipment. Yeah.
You got the membranes.
So Guinness have an Aroma Plus unit similar to us. If you ever go down that route and you have the capital to do it, it is a no-brainer. Yeah.
Well, we've already got too technical this evening, so just to briefly talk about what that means. What that means, it means you brew the beer with the alcohol and you remove the alcohol. Therefore, it tastes exactly the same.
Yeah.
There we go.
I think so. Sorry, Tom.
No, I was going to say, alcohol. Don't underestimate alcohol-free beer. It's not easy to make. Like, it's really not easy to make, and I think, they do it well. You guys obviously do it well, but they nail it over on the continent as well. And I think it's not something I'd like to do more of. But like you said, unless you've got the kind of equipment and the investment. It's a tricky thing to do. So.
Yeah, I mean, ideal world, you have the ability to remove the alcohol, but having removed the alcohol, you've made that susceptible to bacterial infection, because one of the things that was suppressing the growth of the bacteria was the presence of the alcohol. Yeah. So you need to have the ability to remove the alcohol, but then you also need to have the ability to then pasteurize the beer to prevent anything from then growing in it. And combined, you're talking about £200,000 minimum investment to do those two things.
No, you're totally right. You do have to treat sort of low and no very differently to normal beer. I think you had a Salsa audit, I think, recently, but yeah. But anyway, food safety, like with beer, it's a different game, isn't it, to handling sort of raw chicken and other sort of products. And but when you go into low and no, like you know, alcohol is basically a massive barrier, like you were talking about before, for microbes, and you take away that barrier, that's makes
all of beer was deemed a low risk product until recently, because we then started to do a low alcohol beer, and now not all of beer is classified as low risk. We now have some high risk products because it cannot suppress bacterial growth.
No, exactly, and it's a necessary it's a big growing market, but at the end of the day, my living, I make alcohol for a living, so
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, from a personal point of view, I feel quite privileged to have gone on a journey. You know, I am a brewer. I work in a brewery that makes alcohol. But when it comes to sort of being inclusive, and I think if I'll be candid, you know, people try to bring in new drinkers to sort of alcohol-free beer, but let's be honest, like you have to work to like beer, don't you? You know, bitterness isn't something that you're sort of born with. It's a taste that you sort of develop, and you have to invest in it. So I'm trying to encourage people who don't otherwise drink beer to drink non-alcoholic beer. I think is complete rubbish. And what we're doing by making low and no has been inclusive to people who either had to stop drinking for one reason or another, or people are trying to limit their alcohol consumption. So from a brewing perspective, I think it's been an amazing journey to challenge your sort of brewing skills in a different way, and but also knowing that there's the end product can be enjoyed from an inclusive point of view for people who actually drink beer, not people who don't drink beer, if you know what I mean. And,
no, well said, man. Right, so I am being told off camera that we need to move off.
Sorry.
Move on to the next bit.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers, Dan. So don't disappear unless you do
I'm not.
urgently need off. Hopefully we'll have some more questions for you from our audience shortly. I am told we have a few lined up. So now we're going to move on to the next bit, which is Evis juice. So this is a grapefruit APA, which we have based on our core range APA Lupulin, which we make with Cascade, Columbus, Citra, and Mosaic.
Hold on, Lupulin's only 5%. Evis juice is 5.5%.
Yes, and that's because what we did with Lupulin is we added some grapefruit zest into the boil, so you get the kind of zesty character. And then we had added some grapefruit juice into the fermenter to kind of give the more rounded grapefruit character. But fruit has sugar, so it contributed extra alcohol, so it elevated the ABV a little bit. So we've gone up from the original 5% to 5.5% with this particular one.
So I think we should definitely say a little bit more about this beer, but I think we should also bring James online as well, because he's been sat in the wings for an hour and 20 minutes now waiting to join us.
Yeah, so. Good point. Yeah.
So hopefully he's still here. He's not fallen asleep. And
hey, hi James.
Hello, how are we doing?
We're good. So, thank you for being so patient.
No, not a problem.
What tends to happen is obviously we have a couple of pre-live drinks, and then the more drinks we have during the session, the more we waffle. So apologies about that, but you've joined at the peak waffle moment, so you can hopefully join in.
Do you have something in your glass, firstly?
Yes, I do. I have one of my own. Sadly, the ones that you guys gave us from the collab are long gone. They were thoroughly enjoyed by everyone in our team. But no, I am drinking our Long Wave, which is a can I just had in the fridge I'm not normally too stocked up on a Wednesday, but
Give the audience at home a bit of a insight into what long wave is.
long wave is our sort of core pale, I would say. It's a 4.6%, pretty much single hop with Citra, but I remember Lee mentioning earlier that he likes Citra with a little bit of something else.
I do.
So,
I like single hop citrus.
I didn't say it didn't work. I just said, for my palate, there's ways.
well, this has a little bit of Idaho 7 in there as well, so
There you go.
it likes
I've got
to.
fun
Yeah.
about Idaho 7.
Therefore, proving my point.
You know why it's called Idaho 7?
Oh my god. Oh my god.
I feel like we're about to find out.
I've told them it's like probably 30 of the 36
I
live
think,
sessions we've done.
Once upon a time, about 2 years ago, I told it as a funny anecdote, and now Wayne likes to bring it up as a bit of a lodging anecdote.
It's called Idaho 7, believe it or not, because it was actually on the 7th aisle of the hop vineyard, the experimental batch they were
I
growing.
don't think they call them aisles. You're not in a supermarket.
It was a supermarket aisle. It was the 7th aisle in the supermarket, and they found this hop pre-packaged, ready to go, and they thought this tastes good, so we're going to call it Idaho 7. It was in Idaho, by the way, and so that's the story.
Yeah, they found this wild hop in row 7. They really liked the characteristics of it. It then went on to become Idaho 7 for that reason. That's why it has a number in its name.
That's a good fact if you ever want to tell people about it and bore them.
Yeah. I can see him committing that one to memory to just roll out next time he's looking to seduce a lucky lady.
Arguably, I think my favorite hop. Actually, I think it's so distinct. You're not the biggest fan of it, but it's so distinctive.
Was it
I don't dislike it. It's just like not up there for me.
Yeah, I like it.
I think it's a really good hop. I think single hop use like we did. No, we didn't do single hop. We used
Cryo hop.
Thundertaker.
That was good.
It's good, but it definitely tastes better in combination with maybe Citra.
Indeed. Which is what we do in Time Traveling Taxi.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
Back on to, should we rapidly cover off Evis juice, then we can start talking a bit about
Yeah, so we'll come back to you in a second, James. We just didn't want to leave you off camera. We'd already left you for so long. Finishing off Evis juice. So we talked about kind of what the beer is, the ABV, etc. So this was originally brewed a year ago. So we had an opportunity to get some beer into Glastonbury. And it was a bit of a niche route into Glastonbury. It was access to a VIP campsite, but it was also access to Michael Evis, organizer of Glastonbury's private bar. So given we had that opportunity, we thought we'll do a beer with his name on. So the reason it has all this kind of psychedelic branding like this is because it's inspired by the many, many years of Glastonbury's history. And it's Evis juice to honour Michael and now Emily Evis, who organises Glastonbury. But that's not the only reason it's called Evis juice, because there might be another similarly named grapefruit pale out there. Sorry? One letter different, we were told off camera. Yeah, you're not wrong. And it might be a little bit of a dig at a certain brewery who likes to disrupt things, but doesn't like to be disrupted.
So we couldn't possibly go into many more into that. We've already had enough letters this month to warrant any more. But yeah, really interesting beer. But we've upped it this year because we did brew it to 5% last year because we didn't use the grapefruit concentrate, did we, last year? Was it?
No. Last year we reduced the grain recipe to compensate for that.
Yeah.
This year we didn't.
Yeah, so Daisy will vouch for me here that they were the best tasting grapefruits that anyone. And I would go as far as fruit.
Once you'd zested them.
Yeah, just so we zest and juice
bit
them, but we obviously have to sample a bit along the way. And I was absolutely. We worked with Simon Baines in town, so a fruit wholesaler, greengrocer,
who obviously delivered them to the city centre.
Yeah, but no, I honestly, I think it was the best fruit I've ever eaten ever.
Did you sugar them?
We didn't sugar. You didn't need to, did you?
They were just weird. You don't sugar it.
I absolutely dog it. My favourite juice of all time. You know the Robinson's.
My favourite juice was one of your 5 a day, and we got
no. My favourite non-alcoholic juice is the Robinson's pink grapefruit and barley. Absolutely
which
love that stuff.
this is the adult version. Isn't it?
And this is basically, yeah,
Yeah. So
a little bit of pink dye in there, we're there.
Yeah, exactly.
So very, not loosely inspired, but very much inspired by what Magic Rock were doing in the day.
High Wire Grapefruit.
High Wire Grapefruit
Yeah.
was an amazing beer. High Wire was an amazing beer, but High Wire Grapefruit was just the one that hung around a lot longer and just really refreshing.
There was another big grapefruit one, wasn't there? I want to say Beavertown, but I think that was Bloody Hell. They did the orange one. Who else did the grapefruit one?
Yeah. If you've got
not the sickly sweet shop alpha. No.
Yeah.
There was another American pale ale that had grapefruit.
Yeah, exactly. Fun fact: if you've got any form of kind of heart condition, don't drink this because it will make your blood go thin and weird, and you might.
Like Tom Coke.
Yeah, my dad can't drink grapefruit beers because grapefruit.
It's not grapefruit beers specifically. It's grapefruit.
It's just grapefruit. But every time I bring a beer home, he asks me, "Has it got grapefruit in it?" And
They're just grapefruit hops.
Yeah, grapefruit hops. It's grapefruit flavour hops. But yeah, so
I can't say I understand the science of that one, but I suspect if you are in that situation,
you should hopefully know.
You'll know to avoid
If you
these
don't
things.
know, sorry. I hope you've had a nice time.
So very quickly to wrap this one up. Jesus! So obviously we continue to use the New Gutter recycle campaign. We're using up the cans that we may have had another complaint over. They are definitely.
Have we actually talked about that on here before?
I don't know if we have.
I thought you had.
So I think we
so
need
I
to.
didn't bring it.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you are, hopefully you're all aware because we put little flyers in your box and stuff. But the underlying can behind this is the New Got a Friend, which was the definitely not Toy Story inspired beer that we did for Sainsbury's. Look, yeah. So we got one person complained about this can to the Portman Group, and as a result, they issued us a letter to tell us that we had to cease using the can. And thankfully, we had a load pre-ordered and ready to go. So we couldn't use these cans because one person had complained. So we had a huge stockpile of them with our can providers. So we basically decided it was time to draw down on these and to recycle them. So that's where the New Gutter Recycle campaign came from. So we know that the branding on the labels is awesome, and putting it on another can doesn't always look great. But also, it's so wasteful to just leave.
It would have been 40,000 of those we would have had to have destroyed otherwise.
So
that's not very responsible.
So hopefully, you guys at home will still get to enjoy the labels, peel them off, and then for one last hurrah, you'll get to see the ceased and desisted artwork that we have.
I still think it's insane though that they get one complaint. And this beer that is exclusively available in the beer aisle, is it a 6.6% pastry stout?
Oh, it's higher than that.
And they claim we're advertising to children.
It is 6.6, yeah. So yeah. Anyway, that is why we've brought these recycle campaign beers out, and hopefully you won't see them very much going forwards.
The Portman Group exclusively funded by Macro Beer. Tell me about the last macro company they went after.
Yeah, the biggest brewery I know that they've spoken to was probably Tiny Rebel, and obviously
Well, we have to listen because for all it's kind of self-regulating, they do have the power to ban you from selling into supermarkets. So if we didn't comply on this, we wouldn't be able to sell anything into a supermarket.
And it's more than that, it's pubcos as well. So certain pubcos comply with the Portman Group recommendations. So if they tell us that we can't sell it into their supply chain anymore, we would lose out on a lot of sales. So we had to issue a formal, yes, we'll accept your findings. And then York Press rang me up and asked for comment. And I wanted to say,
I know what you wanted
to say
now.
But yeah, it was a bit of a joke, but we've taken it on the chin, and we've definitely not issued a.
Anyway, so James, after saying that we wouldn't waffle too much further, what have we gone on and done? So, James, handing over to you. Do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown on what Play Brew Co is, kind of the styles of beer you make, why we get on so well as breweries?
Yeah, well, Play Brew's been around for about 3 years, so we're still quite a young brewery. I've been there for 2. I was the first full-time brewer there. And the owner is a guy called Phil, who, much like yourself, started out as home brewing, and wanted to turn his passion and hobby into his livelihood, and we're making steps towards that. We've come quite a long way since I've sort of started brewing. We've trebled in size in terms of what we can produce on a monthly basis, and yeah, I think Phil fell in love with craft beer, and particularly sort of a lot of American inspired stuff, sort of probably 10 coming up 10 years ago now. And so a lot of our sort of things are sort of ideas that Phil has come up with based on what's going on in America and stuff like that, or what was big at that point anyway. We've done a lot of different beers, as I'm sure you guys have probably aware. I don't know how many of the viewers have tried many of our beers, but the pales very much New England inspired, all sort of thick, hazy, hop forward beers. We do quite a few fruited sours. We do a lot of milkshake beers, and the flavored stouts are the ones that seem to get most praise, generally speaking. But like Tom, I've worked very hard on our pale beers, and I feel like they have made good progress. I mean, beauty's always in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? But but from my point of view, I'm very proud of them, and I'm very pleased with the way they're going. So
yeah, I said to you when you're up that the pales are, for those of you that may not have had them, that they're very. Someone just put kind of a comment came up just saying play is criminally underrated, and like
Matt Gamblin said that. It was a good comment.
Your pales specifically are very, very, very good in my opinion. So
I think one of the things is the brewing industry is such a tough market. So many breweries out there. It's hard to get your beer in front of enough people. And I think we've all tried your beers. We all really like them, and I think that you're doing great stuff. So I don't think your beers are underrated. I think that people who've tried them massively appreciate them. I just don't think enough people have tried them yet, and that's one of the underrated thing for me that comes from.
I mean, one of the things I love about what you and Phil have done, James, is it would be all too easy to just do the pales, to do the lagers, and you're in Middlesbrough where craft has not been a massively adopted thing. And you said, we're going to do our thing. And that's why I love what you do, because that's what we did in York. We could have just the easy money, but we're like, no, we're going to do our thing, and hopefully we're going to take a few people on that journey with us. And that's what you're doing. So that's good. You're sticking to your principles.
This is a really nice lineup of breweries, really, as well, because you've got kind of Adnams, who are quite a bit bigger than we are, and then just a little bit, and then,
just a smidge, Dan.
It's not about the size, man. Crikey.
We got a good kind of.
I am doing the full Monty very soon.
More on that later.
So we got a good kind of slice of the industry here, and like I hope, like I don't know, it's such a diverse industry, but it's a fun industry. I mean, irrespective of how big we are and all of that kind of stuff, everyone kind of has a nice time together, don't they? So,
and I can actually say this because my family are all from Middlesbrough, but you must be the poshest man in Middlesbrough right now. I can picture that. So I take it you're not actually from Middlesbrough.
No, I'm not.
There's definitely nothing wrong with being from Middlesbrough. Like I said, all my family are from Middlesbrough. I remember as a child, because you guys are on Cannon Park, aren't you? And,
we are. Yeah.
I genuinely remember going there as a child, shopping. There used to be like designer, like warehouse units where you could buy knocked off designer clothes. That I used to pester my parents to buy for me. But yeah, they're definitely genuine original design.
Yeah,
cars, But no, Middlesbrough's awesome. I love the fact that Stockton was always pretty good because we had some really good venues that
Seem to be obsessed with incredibly strong dart beer.
Yeah,
Like, Ship Isis and places.
that one's Sunderland. But,
Was that
but
Sunderland?
yeah, it was.
Yeah. What was the Stockton one then? Top of the Hops.
Yeah, and then there was a couple more.
The Fleet Golden.
But there didn't seem to be that many venues in Middlesbrough buying craft beer. I don't know what it's like now. What do you reckon?
Well,
no, I wouldn't say there's loads. It's Stockton is probably better than Middlesbrough, to be honest. There's a few nice little craft beer pubs in Stockton now. I think Middlesbrough's trying, but it is taking its time as you know, it'll get there, and hopefully Brew will be a part of that.
Your tap room is kind of booming though, isn't it? In terms of
it's really cool.
Lee and I went for your Northern Culture Festival. That's how we met you, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah.
That was absolutely heaving.
Awesome festival, loads
Yeah.
of people there.
Yeah.
And one thing that was really revealing about the local culture was, because I think you had a couple of sessions and there was a lull between sessions.
Yeah.
So we said to Phil, we're going to pop into Middlesbrough and check out a few places. And he said, are you sure?
Yeah.
He's like, you won't find anywhere. So we went off and we came back 2 hours later and we're like, Phil, you were right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, well, as you sort of said there, there's definitely there's people here that like craft beer. There's, we get, like you say, the tap room does do really well here. So there's definitely a market for it. And I know there's a brewery just opened up not too far from us called Talking Tides. I don't know if you guys have heard of them. But they were pouring at that Northern Culture Festival. And they're doing sort of similar to us, but again, a little bit smaller. But similar sort of beers and things like that. So yeah, it's really cool. Like hopefully that sort of thing will start to pick up around here, and because there is definitely a market for it. There's definitely a market for it.
One of the things is you guys are now there doing the doing what hopefully more and more people will enjoy drinking, and you're ahead of everyone else. So it will help as the city picks up, and not the city picks up, but as the drinking culture changes and people move towards what they're doing in the bigger cities in the country, it'll make a massive difference to what.
Yeah, it'll happen, and you'll be part of the vanguard of that local. Yeah, absolutely. So I have been prompted, not for the first time, to get back on script. So we now need to talk about the beer that we brewed together, and I think perhaps you and Tom should talk about that.
Yeah. So we I can explain about the wider context of it. Yeah.
However you want to do it.
So obviously we try and do kind of series of beers at Brew York, and kind of the most recent one of those, well, not the most recent, but a memorable one was the kind of Sweet Shop series that we did over the kind of course of the previous year. So we've kind of brought that one to an end now, and we are kind of thinking of sort of different series we can do, and given our kind of combined affinity for kind of sort of like pastry beers and stuff like that, we're kicking off the first of a kind of series of cocktail inspired beers. So it's quite good actually that we're drinking this beer, Eva's Juice, whilst we talk about this. So James and I were chatting, and I kind of said to him that we're going to do a cocktail kind of beer. What cocktails do you want to do? And you answered pretty much straight away with I'll let you tell it.
Go on then, James. What was it?
It was a Sex on the Beach, which was we quite like to do a cocktail inspired beer ourselves, and it was one of the few cocktails that we haven't done. So I thought, if that's what you guys wanted to do, then why not better to try it? I'll be honest with you, credit where credit's due. It it was the guy who gave me the idea was a guy called Toby from one of our taproom staff, who's been with Play Brew longer than I have, and he just gets it. He really does. And yeah, he said, I think a Sex on the Beach beer would be delicious. And I said, Toby, I think you're absolutely right. And I put it to Tom, and yeah, we went from there.
So as much as I kind of said about the whole pastry, like this beer isn't that. It's not a heavily kind of pastry beer. The recipe itself, I kind of use this beer that we're drinking now as kind of a jumping point. So we're calling it a cocktail pale. So it's kind of a pretty kind of clean American pale ale base, which we've added a tiny bit of maltodextrin just for a tiny bit of background sweetness. It's not by no means a sweet beer as such. And then
Not with that amount of cranberry.
No. And then it's got we added orange zest into the boil. And then it's got peach and cranberry in the fermentation, but we also added a little bit of apricot because peach is crazy subtle. So it's nice just to kind of balance. Like apricot, peach, they are on paper quite similar, but then they're not. But you get that kind of similar flavour.
But it's also a known thing in brewing. If you want to make a beer taste like peach, use apricot.
Yeah.
You don't actually use peach.
Yeah.
What's the actual beer called?
Well, this was your idea, so you need to explain that one.
It's going to be called. It's a Pete's laughing his ass off.
Yeah.
I really like Cal Cox, so it's going to be called Decks on the Beach. So Decks, as in the DJ stood on the beach with some Technics like Decks. That no one's going with
the
me,
branding for it's lovely though.
Can you edit that when Lee said he really likes Cox?
Yeah, which I'm not sure. Pete,
Childish.
you need to send James the branding. I don't think he's seen it yet. But yeah, it's kind of got a tiki. I'm going to ruin it for everyone now. But, kind of tiki bar kind of summery kind of thing. But yeah, it's good. It's really good. I definitely underestimated how tart cranberry can be in the quantities. We didn't even use that much, but so this is grapefruit. And you think grapefruit's tart, but cranberry is really quite tart.
It's not just tart. Cranberry has this incredibly mouth drying, like it sucks the saliva out of your mouth.
Yeah.
It's that drying.
So don't let's put you off. The beer isn't going to be mouth dry.
Yeah, we're really selling this, aren't we?
Tart and dry. It's going to taste like the cocktail. If you've ever had the Decks on the Beach cocktail.
So, but I think for summer, kind of super refreshing. Super session. Well, I say session. Well, it's 6%, but it doesn't taste. The colour's amazing. It's got like a proper kind of peachy, pinky kind of hue to it. Again, like I said earlier, my guys on the brewing team are really happy with this beer, which is
means you're all gonna hate it.
You're all gonna hate it. So yeah, but no, it was a fun little thing to do, and I won't give any spoilers, but Lee and I were working on the next iteration of this series.
First of 4 planned, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we put a cap on it. We're just going to see where it goes.
But minimum of 4 is what
Yeah. So, because I think really, as a brewery in the last kind of few months, we've been. I quite like. Well, hugely sensible, and it's kind of for me as a brewer, I can get on board with that. But we haven't. So this is kind of going back to kind of what Brew York's about, really, and I think that's kind of
about doing the out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And the next one, we've worked on it today, and we're not going to give you too much, but we will say we're going from pale to dark with the next one.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what. Go back to Play again. What's on the cards? What's coming up for Play?
Well, we're looking at doing a Northern Culture again this summer. Aaron, the events manager, works pretty tirelessly behind the scenes to keep the tap room full, but part of our plans for this summer is a Northern Culture again. So fingers crossed that all goes ahead. We're probably going to scale it down a little bit in terms of how many different beers we get, because one of the biggest complaints we had last time was we had about 40 odd beers there, and we've only got 12 taps, so we hired as many Linda machines as we could find, and to dispense as many as we could at once, but we had to sort of split them, so sort of half went on at one point, half went on for the second half of the sessions, and some people just found that confusing. So I think we are going to scale it back so we can just have all of the beers on at once. Live music. We've got a pizza place on site permanently now, which is good. Takes the stress away from of booking food vendors and things like that. The pizzas are fantastic. Proper sort of big American style pizzas. But beer wise, not much. We are running flat out and have been for a while. So until we can sort of, the plans are to grow basically, to try and keep up at the minute, which is a very, very good problem to have. And I'm sure you guys have quite familiar with that problem yourselves. But yeah, we've been doing a lot of cask beer recently. That's been doing really well for us. I feel like the craft beer world has really sort of kicked off in that sense. I think most craft breweries now are doing lots and lots of cask. Some have been doing it the whole time, but for little guys like us, it's about following the market really. We don't always have the luxury of doing huge canning runs or huge cask runs and things like that. We're limited based on our size, but we are getting there. We're getting there. So yeah.
So when you say little guys like you, just for the audience at home, what scale are you guys at? What size is your brew house?
So our brew house is 10 barrel or 16 hectoliter.
So that's the same as our original brewery in York City Centre.
Just down there.
Yeah.
So you guys started at that at 10 barrel. Is that right?
We did. Yeah.
So you started on a 10 barrel kit, which is when we go back to. So we're not actually that old. We feel old, but we aren't actually that old. In 2016, when we started selling beer, we started the process and purchasing and everything else in 2015. And at the time, a lot of breweries were 5 barrels, and that was big for a microbrewery. And people are like, what, you're going to go straight in with 10 barrels? But that kind of feels like a quite a normal size for microbreweries nowadays. But it's still a hell of a lot of volume of beer to sell. Mm. So, and how many tanks do you guys have? How many FVs, fermenters?
So we have 9 fermenters.
Wow, lots of variety.
Yeah. So we do like to do. We very rarely brew the same beer twice. It's only recently that we've started doing that more regularly. But even so, I'd say if we release 8 beers a month, I would say 6 of them are new beers.
That's a pretty cool position to be in, because if we go back to when we started Brew York, it was all about core. We didn't want to brew core beer, but we kind of had to because people weren't used to variety at that point in time, and that was only 7 years ago. And then lockdown happened, and that's all people wanted. And then we kind of then got stuck in a rut of what we had to brew variety.
We went from that to becoming one of the most prolific releases in the UK.
And now we're trying to get back to focusing on core and then doing more limited specials. But you guys have still got in quite a luxurious position of being able to do lots of new stuff. So you get to exercise your creativity a lot then, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. It keeps it interesting. And
you want to
you what, sorry?
Go into, I was going to say, like we do some quite weird beers at Brew York, but I think you've done some probably maybe weird, not even weirder, but
When you
what's
say
the
weird, you don't mean in a bad way.
not
You
in a
mean like
bad way, just
crazy,
experimental
interesting stuff.
out there. But what's the kind of most out there beer? I know what it is. I hope you're going to say what I think it is. But
I think I know what you're talking about,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
wished you weren't going to bring this up.
Yeah, thanks, now we need to hear this.
Yeah, yeah. That might be it. Maybe I don't know. I don't know if you can see the comments.
No, the raspberry vanilla bit. That was the one that was based on the chew that had the purple.
Yeah,
pink
the
stripe
sticky
white.
lolly
I
pale.
remember that one. I like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's pause these questions briefly because we're 10 minutes before the end of the stream and we haven't even talked about the fourth beer. So we did really well for time in this one. So let's very quickly go on to
While you get into that,
the collab we did last month. So if you joined us on the stream last month, the guys from Brass Castle joined us to do the live, and that day we just brewed this beer, which is a cold IPA. So we've gone up in the ABV, so we're a bit stronger than some of our releases, but it doesn't taste strong to me personally. It's 6.8%. It's a really cool beer. It's a cold IPA, so it's basically brewed like an IPA but fermented. We use lager yeast in this one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cold IPA is a little bit like I think what people think Kolsch's are, but a Kolsch isn't that. So cold IPA is basically lager yeast brewed at ale temperatures. So your typical lager yeast is going to like anything between kind of sort of 10 to 14 degrees really. We brew this at around 18 degrees, which is warm for a lager. The idea being is that you can kind of you have lots of volatile kind of flavor compounds or aromas that you get from yeast that you can just scrub off at higher temperatures. I really like this style, and it's kind of a revelation for me in terms of kind of how you can make IPAs really. I think the kind of moniker of cold IPA is definitely something of the moment, but hopefully, I don't know. I would definitely consider just brewing a normal IPA in years to come with this method.
You just don't necessarily
call it a cold IPA. It's not an IPL though. I think this is so. There's so many different lager variants, like a
pale lager, which is effectively a lager which has been dry hopped.
Yeah.
So one of the keys, this beer in particular, the recipe and the hops and stuff was a collaboration with the guys at Brass Castle, Citra, Motueka, and Nelson. So Citra being the big American hop that we talked about earlier, Motueka and Nelson being some really popular New Zealand hops. They are all very expensive hops. So this beer was quite high on the budget this time around. So we try to be as sensible as possible with the different beers we release. We're cautious about the ingredient cost we brew and then the amount of tax we have to pay now in duty. So we've got to be quite balanced. But a 6.8% beer means we pay far much more money than we'd like to the government. And as such, unfortunately, it means the end product is usually more expensive. So hopefully you think it's worth the little bit of the premium on the price. But I think it's a really cool beer. And the name, obviously, Whoopi Goldberg was the guys at Brass Castle came up with it. And obviously based on Whoopi Goldberg.
Although it's now one of our employees that came up with this.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought it was Sam, the head brewer, who came up with the name. And it turns out it was Kev, who was their operations manager at the time, who we've recently brought in to work for us. He was working in our pop bar, Pocklington Bar, that is.
We didn't mean pop bar. We don't have a bar dedicated to pop music. Although Lee's obviously a big pop music fan.
I cannot imagine anything worse. But no, come the end of the month, he will be running the centre of the town bar for us here.
So yeah, sorry.
Well, I was going to say this isn't obviously our first kind of dabbling into this style. We've done Kairaku kind of back end of last year, and then we did Nuke with Big Smoke, and again, kind of, I don't know where well, I do know because we've got a great team, but whenever we just seem to be nailing the kind of these card up, and like I think we're doing a really good job with it.
I think it's about passion. I think we love West Coast styles.
Yeah.
And we like clean, crisp production. as you would do with a lager, and this is the hybrid of those two things.
And this is why I'm really annoyed and disappointed that we didn't send you guys some beer to try on the live. Well, obviously the subscribers have the beer, but we're sorry we didn't send you guys the beer to try alongside us, because these aren't our typical beers. They're a little bit more experimental, and it'd be great if we had you guys trying alongside us. Instead, what we'll do is we'll get you guys some retrospective beers sent across. You can see what we were talking about.
Apologies, Dan. In hindsight, we really should have got these beers to you.
It's
okay.
We don't do the live, the joint live stream. We normally just give you it in person. So apologies.
I know. I had your first beer that you tasted.
One quarter of it, right?
And
then I had this one, Break the Mold, which is equally.
Yeah, and I gave James a big old box of beer. So I don't know if any of these were canned by that point, but yeah.
So we'll ship these beers out to you, and if you're feeling adventurous, you can watch yourself back on camera while you drink these particular beers.
Yeah. So very, very quickly, we'll go through what's coming up, so we can then get onto some of the questions. And obviously, if people need to shoot off, you're more than welcome to, but we'll have the questions to answer. So what are the beer? What's the name of the beer we brewed at Adnams?
Oh, yeah. We probably should mention, Dan, the name of the beer that we brewed. In fact,
I know. We talked all about... Sorry.
No, basically, the first beer that we're going to taste in the next one of these is the beer that we brewed together, which means I have to tell people the names. So maybe you want to explain that one.
Well, when I was going to say, we should have explained it when I was going blah, blah, blah about our yeast, like blah, 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 like blah, 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 isolation, blah, 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 Joy Division, Wayward Distraction, and read the lyrics. And it is basically an analogy for what Class 3 has been living through. And the wayward part of our yeast has been in York. A pleasurable distraction is the fact that it hasn't been dominated by our other yeast strain, and it's been able to exhibit all of its lovely qualities completely isolated from its duties in an isolated form in our continuous fermentation process. Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
it's a great.
Read the lyrics, and you'll understand yeast culture.
I mean, Dan, you won't be aware of this. We were assuming that.
I have.
So we were assuming we'd finished slightly under 5% on this. We're going to end up more like mid fives on this one, I think.
But which is nice. Like we not that everyone needs to know this, but we we have good attenuation in our brewery. Whether you think that's bad or good, it's up to you.
Yeah.
But,
we're working with a yeast that we're not familiar with. Anyway, we do need to move on. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And the hop creep as well is
exactly.
Big for Class 3.
I'm excited. It'll be good.
So the second beer up next month is going to be the beer that we brewed with James. Decks on the Beach, 6% Sex on the Beach cocktail pale. We then have a re-release of one of our favourite sours of all time.
The weather today
would have been perfect today, wouldn't it?
So good. We don't have it on tap
Simon
today.
Lemon, 3.8% lemon sherbet sour. I think we first released it. It was around about the time of London Craft Beer Festival. We were in this sweltering vault, and we had this basically thing that tastes like traditional lemonade.
So good.
So
if you're watching and you're in a pub, we've got 50 litres of it.
Yeah,
So you can have 50 litres of super fashionable lemony beer, and your punters will love it.
That's how confident we are
so,
the volume people are going to consume.
No. Yeah, I know.
And then after you've had that palate cleanser, we're going to finish on a 12% version of Toncoco. It's the time for salted caramel Toncoco.
So if you think we waffled at this session, how much do you think we're going to waffle next session? At least we've got to balance us out a little bit. And then, yeah, in the box, there's going to be some obviously plenty of additional beers. We've got a couple of away collabs going in there. We're going to have the Pastore collab and the Aura collab.
Yep.
That's going to be pretty interesting. We can't tell you much more about the other beers yet because we still don't know them. So, yeah, we will fill your box and we'll get some pretty interesting stuff in there.
Yeah.
So what events have we got coming up? So we've already mentioned, somebody put it on stream earlier, we're at Nottingham this weekend. There's also an event in York this weekend.
Yeah, so you also have the opportunity, if you're local, to get across the Poppleton Beer Festival, which starts this Friday and runs into Saturday. After that, I guess I best do the next one. We have the festival, the Charity Beer Festival, that I am co-organising with the Merchant Adventurers. I've never mentioned that before. In fact, you're going to hear about this in a little bit more soon, I hope, if we don't run out of time. So that's Friday the 30th of June, Saturday the 1st of July.
Which is also the same as Suds and Buds,
Which you're going to be at.
I'm going to go to.
Yeah.
And then Pete and Joanna and Michael are going to do all the pouring so I can enjoy the drinking.
Yeah. I've got a good one. She's not listening, is she? First birthday party.
Yes, exactly. The next event up is our first birthday at Hanley. So that's the 7th and 8th of July. So we haven't got all the plans finalised for this, but it's obviously at our Hanley tap room. We're going to have some really cool food. We're going to have some live music and we're going to do loads of free beer giveaways. So please come down to Oswaldwick that weekend. And
so we're thinking of rolling out the tombola type thing that was really popular at the birthday
spin
party.
A wheel and win a free can of beer.
And yeah, you can spin and win something like some merch or some free beer or something.
Yeah.
So
Very
yeah,
cool.
7th and 8th of July for that. And then the final thing we have coming up in July is myself, Chris from our finance team, and Henry, who's just been promoted to being one of our packaging leads. We're going to be going to Hartlepool, first of all to brew a Tooth and Claw, which is the kind of pilot craft arm of Cameron's Brewery. And then the day after that, on the 22nd of July, we're going to be pouring out the Northeast Brewers Showcase,
Nebs,
otherwise known as Nebs.
are you going to have some bankers?
I'm still looking forward to having the bankers there.
Have you managed to have one yet, James? I know it's not really a Middlesbrough thing, but you must have seen a bankers or heard of one.
Nope.
No, I've tried it.
A bankers is basically trying to get as big a foamy head as you can on the cask.
Oh, yeah.
And they kind of pre-pour them, put them in the fridge, and then turn them back out, and then top them up to get an even bigger, creamier head on. It's like having a 99 on the top of your beer. It's a massive.
Yeah.
So you can only get them in Hartlepool, and if I don't get one while I'm there, I'm going to be very annoyed.
Matt, I heard Matt. What?
Why do I want one of those? Because for the same reason that I wanted a hot rod put into my lager in Germany, sorry, not Germany, in that German bar in
America.
Maine.
It's just
And-
quite
and I-
close to Germany.
And
but
I
yeah.
wanted a milk pour while we were over there.
So we've hit our 2 hours. Funnily enough, we've waffled our way through 2 hours. I'm sure some of you will need to duck off and do other things, but we've got loads of questions we didn't answer earlier. Hopefully, our guests can answer a couple of them, and then Lee's probably going to tell you a little bit more about
So,
that you're organising.
Dan, James, if you're happy to accommodate us, we'll face a few more questions. If you need to get off, we totally understand.
No,
no.
absolutely. I'm having a sneezing fit, so sorry.
Right.
I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy to stay.
Dan, you're up first. What's your favourite style of beer to brew? Is there anything you've not brewed that is an aspiration for you?
Brilliant question. I liked what Tom said about cold IPAs. I think we've our dry hop lager that we've brewed at Adnams is basically a cold IPA that we've been doing for probably about 8 years. Yeah, I think that's a really cool style.
What's the name of it?
It's called, as brewers, don't let us come up with name of beers, right? Bitter, dry hop lager.
How did they come up with that shit?
That's what it says on the tin. To be fair, that's the way that you need to be these days. So who came up with the name Ghost Ship then? Because that doesn't really say what.
No, well, originally it was going to be called Deathly Pale Ale, and so Fergus will tell a better story. So, but we probably about 20 or 30 years ago, there was basically a beer that we'd done the labels for, and it had a cross and a skull and crossbone, and it was going to be called Deathly Pale Ale. And there was a limited amount of bottles that were done, and then it was like, oh, maybe that's a bad idea. And this was like 20, 30 years ago. So sort of drawing on that theme in 2010. So I started. So this was just before I started. Ghost Ship was. Should we call it Deathly Pale Ale? Like, have the lessons been learned? And there's that. Maybe we shouldn't call it Deathly Pale Ale. So Ghost Ship was kind of brought out the idea of like kind of where we are in Suffolk. There's a lot of shipwrecks. The sort of sea bed depth is very shallow. There's lots of sandbanks. So there's lots of shipwrecks, and there's sort of loads of stories about ghost ships and stuff like that. So that's how the name sort of got developed, rather than calling it Deathly Pale Ale, which was the original conception. Yeah.
Definitely
but yeah,
took the right no, I think.
yeah. But beer style, I love to brew every beer style. I think as a brewer, I think I never used to like the idea of brewing to style, but it's something that's as I've got older, I really appreciate, because the things that I used to sort of push back against was that actually, like, say, the brew that we did, like, how do you define it as a style? Like, sometimes you want to brew a beer that you want to brew, and then later you're trying to put it into a category. But when it comes to like having, we'll admit that like beer styles are superficial, but if we can agree on a certain specification, I think it's actually a very good skill for brewers to learn to brew to style, and I think that's a really important tool. So going back to the earlier thing about one of your favorite beers and classifying how I feel about you as brewers, like being able to brew what I think is a pilsner and brewing it really good to style is like a really good skill. So I love all styles. My favorite beer to drink though is still like a really traditional cask beer with shitloads of fuggles. Yeah.
You've done that on purpose, haven't you?
Yeah.
I have. Beth,
yeah.
hashtag Charles Farham.
Yeah, but also we for
That's
those
that's because I sat in that beer garden out there with Dan, telling him how much I hated it.
Yeah, but we now do it. We now do it. Fennec blonde.
I know. Like, that's a little.
They're very floral, Lee. They're very
we're
floral.
out over time, so we need to do this a little snap.
Sorry.
Moving across. No, Dan, all cool, mate, all cool. So, sorry, before we go on with Melissa's questions, can we just flip that question to James?
Yeah.
So, James, let's just do part of that question. What have you not done that you want to do in terms of style?
Oh, that's a good question.
I mean, you guys have done a lot.
Have you done a best
Yeah.
beer yet?
No, and that is something I would like to do. Thank you for answering that for me.
You're just plugging out there.
Yeah, I have brewed bitters before at previous brewing jobs, and they are one of my favorite beers to drink. It's something that we don't. I don't know. Like, I do really like. I come from a real ale sort of traditional English background. And I've always those kind of beers will always hold a place in my heart for sure. It's something that I think, like, because we've started doing a lot of cask beer, I think we will do that sort of style of beer eventually. It's just we don't have the tank space at the minute. We're selling so much of what we already do that it would be a bit silly to deviate at this point.
100%. When we first started Brew York and we had the city centre limitations on the number of tanks we could fit in, it was frustrating for me and Lee at the time when we wanted to brew the style of beer that we wanted to drink ourselves, but we needed a bitter for our tap room. So that's when we brought Maris out. And every time we left the city, we went to other cities and we saw our beer, it was always Maris that we saw because it was the cheapest beer that we made. And sometimes wholesalers will buy the cheapest beer that you make, and then that's what gets traction in further afield. But it was the least representative beer of Brew York at the time. So it was quite frustrating to us at that point in time. But as we've grown and I guess we got older, we like those beers. We drink more and more of those beers.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things that we also have got better at what we do, and then we brought people in who are better at what we do to make those beers. They are great beers in themselves. So we're actually quite proud of having a really good bitter. Really
there was
good
a point
lager.
in time when we were like, let's not allow it to be sold outside of York.
Exactly, we drew it.
Because we're like, we want to restrict, we like what we've done here, but we want to restrict what that does in terms of developing our kind of reputation.
Yeah.
And do you know what? Now, I could not be prouder of what we've done with that beer. I think one of the best things we made is our English bitter.
And I think that's possibly because we've had, which isn't a long time, but 5-6 years of putting some weird and wacky beers out there that people know that we do more than just those type of beers. So they know that they can get a great bitter, a great lager from us, but also they can get something in your face like an imperial salted caramel.
And eventually we all wake up and realize that it's not all about untapped scores.
No, exactly.
Sometimes it's about just genuinely good beer, whatever the idiots rate it as.
Something you want to go out and have 5 or 6 pints of. Which reminds me, I do need another pint of Fennec, sure.
To put things in perspective, though, Maris has 100% been brewed at one gate for pretty much the whole time I've worked with the company. We are now, like, we've done it once or twice in the kind of 2 years I've been in the company, but now the sales of that beer, hopefully have got good enough that we're now starting to brew it Hanley, which is that's a massive jump up in terms of scale, like huge jump up. So it shows that people want to have bitter.
Thank you. You don't get to respond because we are doing a really bad job of being snappy here. Yeah. So can we have another question, please?
Sure. It's a quick fire one.
So Melissa reads, for Brew York and Play, USA craft beer has been a big influence. You have also referenced traditional German and Belgian styles. Which countries do you think have exciting emerging beer scenes?
Snappy for me, Poland. Funky Fluid is so fucking good.
I was going to say Eastern Europe as well.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And the Scandi guys, but probably more mature already. What about you?
I don't think it's emerging, but I think just from having a look at bits, I think Japan might become quite good. Like Japanese beer is a Asahi essentially, but I think the craft scene in Japan is getting bigger. So maybe they'll do some good stuff with that.
And I'm going to sling in one more.
Yeah.
I'm going to say.
You haven't let James on to you.
Sorry, James. I'm going to say one more. Germany, because our friends at Brew, because the people there are tearing up the Reinheitsgebot and they're going, do you know what? We're going to brew what we want to brew. And sue me.
Yeah.
So I think that's a real prime market for some development.
Come on, our guys go on very quickly, snappy answers. What markets do you think are really interesting?
I would say, sorry, I'll try and be snappy. I had a box of beer from in the lockdown, so again, I don't know how emerging it is, but Australian craft beers.
Oh yeah.
And I did not drink a bad beer. They were all really, really tasty. So I'm going to keep my eye out on what's going on over there for sure.
Anything more to add, Dan?
Hashtag Vlad at Dogma Brewery, who Wayne you'll hate, who did a lovely single hop Sabro beer, which was called Sabro Smash. So yeah,
I'd definitely try it. Probably wouldn't have another pint of it, but
it was fantastic. I did challenge him on whether it was single hops. That was how good it was. So yeah.
Well, to be fair, I've never had a single hop Sabro beer.
So you wouldn't though, would you?
Exactly. So that's very snappy. Guys, it's 9:15.
There is just one more which kind of ties it up quite nicely, guys, if you don't mind. And it's this one here.
Have you started the prep for Gary's Garden Stew next month? All right, so yeah, next month our intention is to stream from Pete and Gary's. We've been a bit lax. We've not been in touch with Pete and Gary. We've not worked out a date yet. But there is a bit of a reason for that because, like we said at the start of this, we can't commit to a date yet without your feedback. So we need to know what has worked well, what has not worked well about us doing this in the middle of the week. So you get back to us on that and hopefully do it quite promptly. And then we'll work out with Pete and Kerry what we can do next month.
Yeah, exactly. In a nutshell, there's lots of parts in the mix, so we need to make sure we can make it work. And yeah, let's see what the feedback says and what we can do.
I mean, for me, I would say I've really enjoyed doing this on a Wednesday. I hope it's increased the audience numbers. I've really enjoyed having the virtual guests. Dan, James, I think you've both been amazing. So
yeah,
what about the real life guests?
Oh well,
I was not ruling you out, dude. I was coming to that. Don't worry. Obviously, there was a fear of would the technology screw us over. It has not, so it's worked really well. So I think what we attempted to do with that has been brilliant.
And has anyone at home noticed that Lee's wearing branding for the first time ever on a live stream?
Only because I cut the sleeves off. And it would be cooler this way.
Yeah. I had to raid our web shop this morning to get a clean top because I dirtied mine in the brewery today. So yeah.
And they treated you so well. They give you one from last year's birthday.
Yeah.
No, it's this year's.
But because we're waiting for the new delivery of merch. The new delivery of merch imminent. People tell you when it's available.
Yeah. But if you want a birthday bash top, we've got hundreds of them. So please purchase them on our website.
But huge thank you to everyone, live audience, people dialing from home, our guests in particular.
Name check. So thank you, James from Play Brew Co. Get my teeth in.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Dan from Adnams. Thank you, Tom, our wonderful head brewer, for joining us.
And thanks, Adam. Whoever Adam is, but Adam has got a
Adams, the Adams family.
Yeah.
And as always, our glamorous assistants in the wings, Pants, Pete and Ann, who always.
Is that what we call them now? Is it Pants?
Pants. Who always do so well and making sure this runs smoothly.
Yeah.
Cheers,
Thank
everyone,
you,
and hopefully we'll get you a date soon.
Thank you for
Don't forget
having
to
us.
put food back in. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Bye.